Hi, I'm Andrew Neesna, and welcome back to the Logan and... What's happening?
This isn't right!
What show is this?
I don't know.
This isn't the show.
Hi, I'm Isaac and he's now, and welcome back to the Collin and Isaac Science Show.
I guess we'll collab.
This is Les.
And on this episode of we wanted to figure out if less is more.
So we had to figure out which one of our youth pastors could throw a football the fastest between Les and Brad.
But Brad wasn't available at the time, so first Brad wasn't available at the time, so we found the derivative of Brad. We found that Brad prime of x equals Wayne Arnold Delso.
Before we could figure out how fast Les could throw it, we had to have him throw the football.
Now time for Mr. Delso. Mr. Delso. Mr. Brelso?
Who do you think was faster?
Pause this video and talk about who you think it is.
Ready? Okay, time for some math. So first we used log or pros to find our position equation. We then took the derivative of the position equation to find our velocity equation. We then took the derivative of the velocity equation to find our acceleration equation.
The instantaneous velocity at 2.5 seconds for Les's throw was 10.88 meters per second. The instantaneous velocity at 5 seconds for Les's throw was negative 11.02 meters per second.
To find our average acceleration, we took 2 points, time equals 2.5 and time equals 5, and plugged into the equation v of b minus v of a over b minus a to find that our average acceleration of Les throwing the football was negative 8.76 meters per second squared, which makes sense because of gravity. To find our average velocity, we use the equation x of b minus x of a over b minus a to find our average velocity of Les throwing the football, negative 0.07 meters per second, which is about 0, which makes sense.
In order to find the instantaneous velocity of Mr. Delso, we plugged in 2 and 4 into the velocity equation. Whenever plugging in 2, we got 7.368 meters per second, and whenever we plugged in 4, we got negative 7.584 meters per second.
After finding the instantaneous velocity at 2 seconds and the instantaneous velocity at 4 seconds, in order to find the average acceleration of Mr. Delso, we plugged it into the formula
v of b minus v of a all over b minus a,
which would be negative 7.584 subtracted by 7.368 all over 4 minus 2, which gave us an average acceleration for Mr. Delso of negative 7.471 meters per second squared. In order to find the average velocity for Mr. Delso, we took the instantaneous positions at 2 seconds, which was 0.708, and at 4 seconds, which was 0.492, and plugged them into the formula x of b minus x of a all over b minus a, which was 0.492 subtracted by 0.708 all over 4 minus 2, which gave us an average velocity for Mr. Delso of negative 0.108 meters per second.
Although Mr. Delso had the higher average velocity, Les threw with more force and had a higher maximum velocity, which means he threw faster. When taking the average, we only took the initial and final velocities, and in a vacuum both would have been 0, so we are more interested about who had the highest maximum velocity when considering who was the fastest, which was Les.
So in conclusion, less is more.
Wait, who is more?
Less is more.
I thought Les was less.
No, Delso is less.
Wait, so Delso isn't less?
Yes, because less is less.
I thought less was more.
Les is less.
Then who's more?
Les is more.
Les is less than Delso?
No, Delso is less than Les.
Wait, so Delso is not more than
Delso is less than less, who is more than Delso, who is less than less.
Do you get it now?
No. Therefore, after finding the equations for positions of both Delso and Les,
taking the derivative of the position equations to get the equation for velocity,
taking the derivative of the velocity equations to get acceleration,
find the instantaneous velocities of both Mr. Delso and Les,
and finding the average velocity and acceleration of both Delso and Les.
scientifically and mathematically, less is more.
Mathbusters.
Tune in next week to find out how actually to pet a cactus.
Probably.
We're never gonna pet a cactus.